Good morning and welcome to Coffee and the Word. Sorry about yesterday. I went to Fort Worth and helped my son and daughter-in-law move down to the valley, and so I'm back today, and it's good to be back. And it was a long trip, but today I want to talk to you about something. In fact, you see it in the title. The title is "Don't Be Judgy." How many times have you heard that? Don't be judgy. Like, why are you being so judgy? And the idea behind that is we should not have a thought about someone else's choices. We shouldn't have a thought about someone else's life. We shouldn't get to decide what is right and wrong for someone else. And so, in fact, a lot of people will say, even the Bible says, do not judge. And I want to talk about that a little bit because Jesus tells a couple of different parables about this concept. And in fact, he starts in Matthew chapter 7, do not judge, or you will be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, you will be judged. With the same measure you use, it will be measured to you. That seems reasonable. Do not judge, or you will be judged. If you judge, you're going to be judged by the same measurement that you're using to judge another. And then he tells this little parable. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention at all to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eyes. And so it's really interesting here because it seems like Jesus is starting with don't judge. And then later he's saying, but some things are obvious. Like, you can see the speck in your brother's eye, but you're not seeing the plank in your own eye. And so it seems like what Jesus is pointing to is start with yourself. Like, work on you first before you go fixing other people. Like, don't pull the speck out of your brother's eye if you've got a plank hanging out of your eye. And I think this is very interesting because he then, many times, Jesus encourages us to judge. You know, he encourages us to judge whether or not a thing is good. He encourages us to judge whether or not a thing is right. He encourages us to judge whether or not it is something that will be pleasing to God or God would be disappointed in. And so the concept of judgment gets a bad rap because we are required to make judgments all the time. In fact, I dare suggest that all of us make judgments constantly. But when we say don't be judgy, what we really mean, and what Jesus kind of means, is don't be so consumed with what's wrong with that person when you haven't dealt with this person. And that's kind of the idea here. And so he tells him, it's like, don't get so caught up in trying to, in fact, this is what usually happens, and this is the thing that is condemned. Don't try and elevate yourself by condemning another person. Don't try and make yourself feel better about yourself by making someone else seem less valuable or less righteous or less good. And so that seems to be his big point here. And I want you to understand that what you and I need to be doing, especially in today's world, is we need to be removing the plank out of our own eye so that we can help our brother get the speck out of his eye. We need to be very cognizant of our own lifestyles so that we live lives so good that we're able to help others through their mess. And I think that's an important point, and I think it's one that we often overlook. And I'm going to tell you one of the reasons we one of the reasons we judge so readily is because it allows us to focus on something else other than ourselves. There's another parable in Luke 18 that I want to point out before I go any further, because this one's an interesting one too. And here's how Jesus tells the parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, Or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of all that I get. Stop right here before I go any further. Can we all agree that it's good that this man isn't a robber or an evildoer, an adulterer, or even a tax collector? Like, this is not a bad thing. And so he's like, I thank you that I'm not like other people. The problem here is he's still focused on the fact that I'm better than that person. Listen to the tax collector. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Listen to this next phrase. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exhausted. And so there's this point here that I think illustrates what Jesus is trying to say. Is this tax collector didn't realize, though he wasn't any of those things that he mentions, he is still a sinful man. And all of us should realize in our seat of judgment, we are setting a measuring stick that we ourselves often can't live up to. And so I want us to realize that the judgment concept is gotten a bad rap because we are called to judge things. It is not our job to judge people. It is our job to judge what is good and right and worthy, praiseworthy. And so I want to challenge you as you go about doing. Take a minute and realize that you need God to forgive you, to cleanse you, to have mercy on you for things you've done wrong. And because of that, you and I should also be forgiving and merciful and considerate and kind and help a brother along his way. Let's stop being judgy, even though sometimes we will have to judge. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. This has been another edition of Coffee and the Word.